Herb. Yo, I don't think we should talk about this.
Come on, why not?
People might misunderstand what we're trying to say, you know? But that's okay.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk.
Quit is giggity.
Sexy.
Can we just talk?
You're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the Voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC. You're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the Voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Rocky Lee Savage, and today we're going to be talking about the alphabet community here with Professor Angel Russell. So tell me about yourself, Angel.
Hello, I'm Angel on the internet. People know me as Professor Sex. It's an X-Men reference. I'm just a giant nerd. I do a lot of education in the queer community, in the kink community, in the polyamorous community, and so those are sort of the folks marginalized sexual spaces, and so we made a lot of X-Men jokes, and then Professor Sex sort of came out of that. And so
I like the nerd quality. I'm a total nerd fan. Like, if you saw my other side of my wall, I've got like Deadpool over here, and then I have anything from like Batman. Like, I'm a huge Batman fan.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
I was a Superman fan growing up. I always loved Superman, and then when Dean Cain played Superman, like, I'm old, and so when Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher did Lois and Clark, the TV show, which you may have seen reruns or like a meme about.
Yes, because I'm kind of in the millennial age. I hate to say that, like.
I'm an elder millennial, so I'm like right in that stage between Gen X and millennials. I'm like on a cusp year, and so but I was a big Dean Cain just skyrocketed my love for Superman just right over the moon. And so
you're gonna hate me, but I'm not a big Superman fan.
I think I'm a Dean Cain fan.
You
is
are.
what it is.
Okay. That's probably why.
Or I was.
Oh, you were?
Because he's cute.
Well, hey, you know what? I like Spider-Man just for that reason, because his butt is so nice.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, isn't that why we all watch Thor do anything?
Yeah.
It's just pretty.
With all those muscles and the hair. It's like, that's all you do is dream about it.
Give me the hair. Yeah.
No, I totally get it. Okay, so I feel like this Valentine's Day we're gonna celebrate the rainbow of love. So I have a few questions for you. You ready? Okay.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So let's start with the L in lesbian. So tell me, what are the different types of lesbians?
And I'm on a game show. When we come out, we don't get like there's not like an actual gay agenda that gets handed out, like a manual with like all the words in it.
I wish they did.
Wouldn't that be cool, right? If they just like a book out to your house, like the gay mafia showed up and handed you like a dictionary and said, this is how you talk about yourself, and this is the
way of the world. Take it and bark.
And it doesn't exist. So depending on where you're doing your learning, everybody's language shifts. And so that's why there's 100 different words for lesbian, and that's why there's 100 different words for gay, and that's why when I say queer, it means something, and when someone else says it, it means something else. Like, we all use language the best way we can, and then our other identities intersect with that. So queer communities of color use different language differently than like white queer communities, and like even indigenous folks use language different than like black folks use different language differently. And so depending on and then age groups, like I'm an old person, and so I'm going to use language differently than like, someone in your age group, and like my kids who look at both of us like we're ancient are using language in their own way. And so I'm going to tell you word types of lesbians I'm aware of, and then you're going to fill in gaps for me.
Fair.
With what the kids are saying.
The kids are saying, I am not that young.
No, it's good. Embrace it.
Oh, no, I am. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I still get carded when I get alcohol every day. And I'm glad that, like, people think that I am not old enough to rent a car. Yeah. And I think maybe it's because of the hair. But we don't need to go.
I had purple hair until 2 days ago, and I got the same. And so, yes.
Actually, this is kind of inspired by Cosmo and Wanda.
Oh, well,
green and pink.
Perfect. Okay. So, like lipstick lesbian, right? So those are the like babe lesbians.
Okay.
Like super femme, like high femme lesbian,
No, I understand that. That's usually the girl. In my mind, I always picture somebody who's wearing like makeup, dressy. They like to be glamorous, and then that's usually where my mindset goes.
Yeah. Like, and then, so then you've got more like you might hear butch lesbian would be like another term. So like in research, you'll hear terms like femme and butch. So I do like a lot of psych research, like my background is psychological science.
Okay.
So we'll hear terms like femme and butch. And so femme would be like the more feminine, expressive end of the spectrum. And then butch would be the more like masculine end of the spectrum. And so a butch lesbian might be somebody who wears like more masculine clothing or has like a more masculine like hairstyle, or maybe doesn't wear a lot of makeup.
I think of Boo from Orange is the New Black when I think of butch lesbian. So if anybody's listening out there, Google Boo from Orange is the New Black, and that's
You're
exactly
welcome.
There you go. We solved the whole mystery for you.
Boo's good stuff. Yeah. So that's like, and then like other language for butch might be like dyke, but then also dyke, like lots of folks in the lesbian community use dyke, even if they're all over the spectrum. So I think, and dyke is cool because it's been really reclaimed. Like it used to be slur.
Yes, it used to be back in the 1980s, I believe, was the coin term. Yes, back in my day. I'm not that old. Why did I say that? But anyways, yes. Like back in the 80s, when I was reading Cross-Ref Women of the Cherry Grove, saying that dyke was coined as a term, as a slur, as saying that like these male type androgynous women were kind of coming in and impeding and buying up the land in the area, doing the same things that gay men had the rights to do at the time. But, you know, because they're women, they are automatically seen as atrocities. So, yes. And that's when dyke came about. Even though it's, in my mind, still seems pretty derogatory, we kind of should start moving towards the pretty more known terms, such as femme and, stud. I love stud.
I like stud.
I love stud.
So when you say stud, you mean?
How do I think of stud? Like, my favorite stud in my opinion is Brittany Griner from the WNBA. She is the epitome of what I want. In terms of like, yes, in my mind, it's like the male version of what I like in either a male, or if I were, I am bisexual, so we'll talk about that. I like in females. That's the type of woman I would go towards, because she's more on a masculine spectrum than on a woman, like she's more soft and,
No, totally. Yeah. It's not as soft.
Yes, not as soft.
Like it sounds like what it sounds like. The word stud. Like you talk about like somebody who's studly. Like what a fucking stud. Okay, yeah. So stud I like. It's funny you said you were talking about the Cherry Grove women and use the word androgynous, and I just had this fun little like tidbit for folks listening. A lot of times when we use the word androgynous, people use it for folks who like don't seem to be presenting gender. Like they sort of seem neutral. But androgynous actually means a lot of characteristics of both genders.
Right.
And so somebody who doesn't present a lot of characteristics of either gender or is sort of neutral would be, the word is undifferentiated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned something.
It's just people tend to use the word androgynous for both concepts. Mm-hmm. But if you were like reading research, or if you were to like drill down to those terms, there's actually, so you've got femme expressive, you've got masculine expressive, you have androgynous which is both, and then you have undifferentiated, which is neither. And so if it's like a big grid, then people fall like somewhere inside that grid.
Okay.
So
I understand that. This is DJ Rocky Lee Savage saying you're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and here with me is Angel Russell. And we are dissecting the LGBTQIA community. Stupid question, but how do you know if you're a lesbian?
How do you know if you are a chick who likes chick? Welcome to the club. So I think that I hate to like, the best part about this stuff is you get to kind of pick the terms that feel the best for you.
Right.
So it's when we talk about like how I use the definition when I'm teaching, I would say that a lesbian is somebody who identifies as a woman and has a distinct preference for other people who identify as women. But like as a general,
right.
But we can already think of like exceptions to that. Like there are folks who identify as lesbians but date like trans men, and there are folks who identify as lesbians and date very feminine men, and so there's a lot of.
So how does that play into whether or not you know that you are? Because when you are dating trans men, you're basically saying that, hey, at this point I'm kind of heteronormative.
Well, I think there might be an appearance of heteronormativity, right? Like if somebody somebody outside was looking at the relationship and what they, we're going to break it down even farther. Like, just like more foundation. You've got gender, like how you identify. And then you've got gender expression, which is what other people see when they're looking at you, right? So like, I might look at a butch, like a really butch lesbian, and look at a trans man and not know the difference from the outside, right? Like, just, so even two lesbians could be in a relationship that looked heteronormative to somebody who didn't know better, right? Like just from the outside. But if I'm a lesbian and I'm dating a trans man, technically that relationship would be more like a straight relationship, but I might still hold on to the identity lesbian for any number of reasons. Like these labels, this language is very deeply personal. And so if that language has been really important to me and been a big part of my identity, I might not be ready to let that go, or it might not feel right to me to let that go just because I'm dating someone who sort of exists outside that space. Because our behavior isn't identity. Our behavior can inform our identity, but it's not the same thing. Here's a fun fact. 75% of men who have sex with men identify as straight.
No, I understand that, which we're going to talk about how the no homo thing comes about in the Black community.
I know it's farther down, but I was just saying, like, I won't jump ahead, but I was more saying, like, a lot of people don't know that. They think, oh, if you're a man who has sex with men, you must be gay.
Yeah.
Right? And so folks in the community, like, know better, but folks outside the community are, like, flabbergasted when it occurs to them, like, oh, like, wait, identity and behavior aren't the same. And so I would say, how do you know you're a lesbian? If you're learning this language and you're in these communities, and you just start to get a sense of like, yeah, that's the right word for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's it. And it just sort of hit, and maybe you can explain it to other people, and maybe it will make sense to them, and maybe you can't explain it to other people or even yourself, but you just know it's right. Like, I think eventually just you hear something and you go, yes, that's it. That's the language to describe the feeling I'm having.
Right. I guess that makes sense. Any other protection that you can provide for us? Like, is there anything I could use to protect myself from any STDs as a lesbian?
Lesbian. Well, yeah, I love the like there's a lot of myth that like two women can't give each other STIs.
I was always wondering if you can actually swap something scissoring with somebody. Like, I'm like, if I'm bumping privates, aren't I still swapping some type of fluids with you? No?
Yeah, well, it's not just about fluid swap too. Like, some stuff is skin to skin contact.
Okay. I never thought about that either.
Yeah. So no matter what the makeup of genitalia in the relationship is, if you're grinding genitals or you're swapping body fluids, there's risk. And like the levels of risk are going to shift depending on like what fluids are being swapped and what parts of your body are doing the deed. But like the risk is there. So dental dams is a really cool one that a lot of people go like, it's so funny how many people roll their eyes when I say dental dams, but the folks who use them are like, yes, absolutely. Dental dams are awesome. So people who don't know what a dental dam is,
I actually don't know what it is.
Basically what it is a square of latex or like plastic. Like, think of like a square of saran wrap.
Okay.
And it's about this, it's a little larger than the size of your hand. And it's thin.
Okay.
And it's thin like a condom.
Okay.
And it goes over whatever part of the body. And the reason they're called dental dams because they're from the dental community. Like, it's how dentists put that barrier between like your blood and their body.
Talking about teeth into skin contact, and that's literally what my mind thinks of because
which is, yeah, so but we don't want to do teeth.
Oh my god, have you ever had it chewed out by somebody who didn't know they were doing? Okay, so you know my pain.
You know, right, and you don't forget.
No, you don't.
You know right away, don't forget.
Because I remember, like, not having, I couldn't wear underwear, number one, and two, like, walking around felt like the worst feeling in the world.
When we are off the air, remind me to tell you a horror story of my own that I think might otherwise get bleeped out. But yeah, I got a good one.
Oh god.
So yeah, no, so dental dams are one way, and you can buy dental dams. They're like, they're actually made of nitrile, so they're latex free. And so you can buy dental dams from like the company that makes them. Sometimes you can get them at the drugstore, but not always. A lot of health departments and like Planned Parenthood will carry them. A lot of LGBT resource centers have them, but you can also use saran wrap as a dental dam.
Yeah, I've seen that in, what was the name of that movie that I watched for the first time? It was Booty Call back in the 90s.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
I've heard of it.
Yes, it's with Jamie Foxx and I think one of his girlfriends go to send him out to go get, it's Vivica Fox, who send him to go get saran wrap from the store to go, and he ends up wrapping his entire body in it, thinking that's the way to go. And then he comes like being mummified, and she has to like, she's like, I'm not in the mood anymore. I basically had to save you.
This became a medical emergency. And so,
right.
so you can use saran wrap. Sometimes you'll hear that you can't use microwave safe saran wrap, but actually you can. So they've done, and that's good. So there are videos and like links and stuff for how to do that. And I can send you some that you can, I don't know if you guys do show notes for your show, but people who are listening, if you just Google turn a condom into a dental dam, Planned Parenthood and Scarletine both have really cool visuals on how to do it. And so I like to use flavored condoms and then use those. And then you get the cool, like the mint flavored condoms. Yeah. And that's like perfect. And it's great. And then you don't have to carry these big weird plastic sheets around with you. You just have like a handful of flavored condoms.
That's cute. Yeah. They should make a box for that. Anyways, you're listening to the voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC. This is Pleasurable Noise here with Angel Russell. How you doing, Angel?
Hello.
So we were talking about lesbian because this is Valentine's Day episode and we have to talk about the rainbow and all of love. So what are some of the stigmas that come with being a lesbian?
Stigmas that come with being a lesbian. I think that there's this sense that people think, I guess it's more of a myth, but people think that like one of you has to be the man and one of you has to be the woman, which is you're both women. I think that there's a lot of stigma, especially for when people first come out. I don't know if you got any of this when you first came out, that it's like a phase. Like bi folks get it like a lot.
I definitely do.
Get it too.
It's definitely amongst the bi. Well, in my community, where if I talk to other lesbians, they don't want to talk to me because they're like, oh well, you might flip flop, or yes, that's one thing, because like 1 minute you're you're really into men, but like I'm into both. You can't tell me how I feel, but if that's if that's how you feel, then fine. Like, we don't have to date.
Like the phrase gold star lesbian?
Yes. Like, what does that even mean? That's your problem if you don't want to go beyond, just, that's fine. But for me, like, I explored, I found out I like both, and sometimes I like it both at the same time. Right, another episode.
Yeah, no. So for folks who are like, what's a gold star lesbian? It's a lesbian who's never been with a man.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's like there's a lot of stigma in the community that like that's better than like being a lesbian who maybe didn't come out later in life, or being a lesbian who later comes out as bi or whatever. Like, and so there can be some kind of in-group fighting.
I mean, I don't see what the difference is. Like, if I'm out, regardless of what I like who I like. I mean, I don't think that should determine whether or not that makes me a hoe. If I like who I like, it doesn't mean that like I'm gonna cheat on you, because I realize that that's also an issue that especially gold star lesbians go through, that if I'm bisexual, then I am immediately gonna cheat on you because I like men. That's not necessarily true. Yeah, I'm with you because I like you. There's something about you that, drew me to you. And, that's always seems to be a major argument, that, like, I would like to crush.
I know. When we get to the section about bisexuality, there's, like, so much of that. Like,
yes.
I could spend hours just talking about that. Like,
I think because we're gonna talk about bisexuality now.
Yeah, no, you get it from both sides. Like you said, if you're dating a man, then they're like, oh, you're gonna leave me for a woman. If you're dating a woman, and everybody thinks that you're just sleeping around with everybody else, or that it's just a phase, that it's not real. I had somebody tell me that their kid told them bisexuality is not a real thing. I was like, what are the children learning these days? Like, it is a real thing. Like, I was very worried about the kids.
For me, I feel like there's no way men can be bisexual, because they're like, I'm not saying for real, but I'm saying like in their head, they're like, no way, because, it's either I am straight because it's wrong. And a lot of I feel like it's projected onto the male community that, they should be this strong, and they get a lot of this feel on their shoulders that they have to be a certain type of person, and they're not. And the problem is that they fall and think that if they are a little vulnerable to somebody, that makes them less of a man. So being vulnerable with another man that's seen as like lower in power, and they feel like they have to compete against somebody. I guess that's where explain that to me.
There's a couple of things at play. So first, we as a culture, as a society, like, American culture prioritizes masculinity over femininity in all ways. Mm-hmm. We just do. But if you're a woman, there's a lot more room to be sexually fluid. There's a lot more room to be fluid in your gender. A woman dressed in men's clothing, there's not always an instant assumption that she's gay. There's not always many instant assumptions about her. If you had a teen girl wear a boy's hoodie to school, nobody's going to bat an eyelash. But if her same age male peer wore a girl's hoodie to school, it would be like a whole thing. So we give women permission to be a lot more expressive and experimental, and we socialize them with that. Where men, like you said, the rules are much stricter. And so there's this idea about being a man looks a certain way, and part of that is toughness. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't, the stigma is you can't be emotional and be tough. Emotions are weak. Mm-hmm. So any emotion is out. Vulnerability is weak. It's out. You can't be vulnerable and be tough. So men are strong and they're silent and they're, protect, provide, procreate. And like, that's it. Mm-hmm. And so anything outside of that is feminine. And if you're at all feminine, you must be gay. Right. So then if you're actually gay, that's like a two-hitter, mm-hmm. right? Like you're, and so there's all of these, we constantly demoralize any expression that a man could have that might remotely look feminine, right? Like right. We just can't, how do men insult each other? They say things like grow up hair and they, don't be a pussy and we just, the ways that the insults are always centered around some kind of like, oh, you're just being a little girl about it. You throw like a girl. Like it's emasculating. It's just constant emasculation. And so this sense of I have to prove that I'm a man. Right. And so, yeah, I think there is if you're a man and you're gay, it's going to be challenging. And then, we all know that each culture has a different idea of manliness, and some right. cultural ideas of manliness are more rigid. Like I know Latino cultures have very, very rigid ideas of masculinity. And I know
they will beat their children if they even yes. find out that they're gay. And, yes. And I know in Jamaica, they tell me that they have mutilated men and then stuffed their privates in their mouth and to show to the rest of the world that if you are gay, you will be punished this way for it. And it's disgusting. In Russia, you'll talk about how they have raped and mutilated other people just to get them to stop being gay. And right.
So it's already hard enough. So if you're a man and you're gay, you've already got this mountain that you're trying to climb. Mm-hmm. But that's gotten, maybe not in other countries as much, but here we're starting to normalize male gayness, just gay specifically, as long as you adhere to other kinds of masculinity. So if you're still like a dude's dude, fine, okay, you're gay. But if you start to be extra feminine, so maybe you do drag or maybe you're whatever, then we start to stigmatize you more and more and more. So then let's add in men who are bisexual. Right. I can't imagine how much harder it is for a man to come out as bisexual than it is for women to come out as bisexual. It's hard for women, people don't believe you. But for men, it's so many other layers. Because there's a sense that you're not committing. There's a sense that you're hiding something. There's a sense that you're being wishy-washy. There's when are you just going to find a good woman and settle down? I just can't imagine the extra layers because of how we put pressure on men to conform and fit in this box in such a big way. So yeah, that's
my favorite line by Lizzo. Why men great till they gotta be great?
Yeah.
Yes. That's a great line. Anyways, we skipped all the way to B. I forgot.
We did. We can go back up. Let's go to gay.
We can go back to gay. So let's go back to gay. So gay. What are the different terms for gay males?
Oh, I see. I don't know all these. I know. Well, I know some of the terms. I can't define them all. So there's like a bear, right? So it's like a big, manly, big guy, right? Like he's like a bear. And then there's like a twink. So he's like a short, more feminine, petite kind of guy. And then,
I think the twinks I meet, why are they taller than me?
It's like lean, skinny.
Yes.
So I said short, but maybe I should have just said petite.
Yes.
It's a frame.
Yes.
It's an issue of frame.
Most definitely.
And there's otters, and I always get that wrong, but I know that's one.
Otter?
Otter. I know otter is one, and I always get the definition wrong. I feel like a terrible queer. But there's layers and layers and layers. And I think they have the same kind of sense of, there's some stereotyping that happens in their community, the same way in the lesbian community, there's some stereotypes. And there's this sense of like, you have to sort of find the box you fit into and like be in that box. So if you're a top, you have to always be a top. If you're a bottom, you have to always be a bottom. I think there's some sense of that, you know, and that also can sometimes relate to masculinity. And, so if you're like a really masculine guy who bottoms, like, I know that sometimes that there's some stigma around that. And,
right.
And I would say, like, I'm definitely not the best person to speak for
the gay community.
Gay men, but
right.
I know enough to be dangerous. So.
You know enough to, you know, talk enough. Okay, so I have a question.
I could do like a good 101.
So what are some of the terms that they would go by? Like, what are their pronouns?
Well, I mean, they could use any pronouns. I mean, in any community, that's the cool thing I'm seeing is we're seeing men use he pronouns. We're seeing men use they pronouns. We're seeing some men use she pronouns if their even if their gender identity is still man, if their gender expression is feminine, they might want to go by she. Right. So I think it's really cool to see folks be a lot more expressive with their pronouns. So that's been really neat, creative.
I think it's like, you know, the evolution of sex education in schools now and being more educated and more aware of themselves. That's starting the progression of, I guess, people honing those terms.
I don't know if it's related to sex ed in schools, but it's definitely related to internet access in schools.
That too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, your generation and the generation of kids, like my kids' age, they're younger than you. I have a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, like their age. They grew up with the internet their whole time they've been alive. So they've always had technology in their hands. And so where their teachers or their parents fail them in terms of providing information or even having the information to provide, they have Google and they have Tumblr and they have TikTok and they have Snapchat. And so they have these ways of exchanging information that we never had. And so I think that what we're seeing, this like big boom and like shift in language and all these new terms coming up, I think it's because people are communicating with each other and they're learning more about each other because we have access to that in ways we never did. We're sharing information in better ways. And so even though I don't know that school sex ed is good, I think school sex ed is trying to get better. I think there's some awareness around it, but it has a long way to go.
I agree.
But I think there are resources, for better or for worse, there are more resources on the internet that people have access to that they never did before.
I think that's it for the questions. Was there anything you'd like to plug in? Where to find you?
Yeah, so people can find me at professorsex.com. It's just spelled exactly like it sounds. And I do host a podcast with my co-host is Dr. Rob Zeglin. So I'm Angel Russell. He's Rob Zeglin with a Z. And so the podcast is called Sex from A to Z, like A and Z. And so it's a sex science podcast. So we look at different pieces of scientific literature on sex and relationships, and then we explain them in plain language and talk about the impact that science has on the way real people live their lives. We have a really good time. So you can find that anywhere you find podcasts. We're also on YouTube, but if you just go to professorsex.com, it's all there. All the links to everything are all at professorsex.com, and I'm very easy to get a hold of. There's a contact form, and so yeah.
Okay, so thank you for being here, Angel.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or comments, email us at pleasureablenoise@gmail.com. That's pleasureablenoise@gmail.com. This show will be available on podcast, Speaker, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. This has been another episode of Pleasurable Noise on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.